Brat is precisely what happens when you give an artist the full license to just go all out and do exactly what they want. You give them the artistic control. You don't put restrictions on them just for the sake of hoping to sell more records. You let them breathe and give it their all and do exactly what they want and let them live out their vision. Because this is Charli at her best, and the last time we heard Charli, it was very much restricted. It was very much something that felt really out of her control and very much something that the label was pushing. But now here we are, and we are reaping the rewards with not only a great album, but an album that is also performing better than any other Charli album to date. Like, if record labels don't learn from this, and they don't learn from the rise of Chappell Roan, the music industry is just going to go back to square one. The chances of them learning is very slim. But if they do learn, we might be in a good place finally. I don't want to just hate on Crash, and I don't even want to really raise it that much in this entire review. But it was very obvious that something didn't feel quite right. It didn't feel like Charli was putting her all into it. Something felt like it was being held back. From the moment that album came out, it was just very much a feeling of, is her heart fully in this? Now we have Brat. Now we have an album that's really up there with how I'm feeling now in terms of her best ever work. And you can just feel exactly what she wants to do, and she's achieving her vision so beautifully on this album. The lead singles for this album were very juicy and showcased to me that Charli was very much heading in a bit more of a dance and maybe house inspired album, particularly with tracks like Von Dutch and Club Classics, which are excellent tracks on this album, some of the best on the whole thing. And the cool thing is that the whole album doesn't necessarily stay within that sound and actually gives us some of that classic hyperpop bubblegum bass moments that we've heard from Pop 2 and throughout Charli's entire career, but just feels like it's just been given more room to breathe and more room to live, and just feels like her headspace is in a bit more of like a live setting. I mean, she did do the Boiler Room, of course, and it feels like she's just giving these tracks a bit more oomph and a bit more of a bounce to them that just makes them so fun and lively and energetic from start to end. 360 Charli was one of the other singles as well, kicks this album off. Just classic Charli with that attitude, the swag, with the way that she's like flowing over the beat so nicely. She sounds so cool. It's unapologetically like bravado from end to end of this song. She pulls it off as she would, and I don't really expect her not to pull off a track like this. And yeah, just kind of feels like classic Charli, just kind of streamlined more in a way that I like quite a bit. And I also feel like Talk Talk has that kind of streamlined feel to it as well, where it feels like it's kind of like in the middle of her dropping a song that could easily like get on the radio, like a 1999, but also has that authentic like hyperpop feel to it as well. That back to back with Von Dutch is fantastic though. These two tracks have some of the highest energy moments on the entire album, and it's just a punch, like a back to back punch, one after the other on this album, which is great. The cool thing is though about Von Dutch is that something that did seem apparent initially when I heard the song, where I was like, who is she singing about on this one? Whereby it turns out she's admitted herself that this is a diss track. I mean, she didn't even have to reveal this info, but she mentioned it on her TikTok because she was addressing the fact that everybody thought Girl So Confusing was the diss track. But then she kind of just dropped the fact that this is the diss track. And when you listen to the lyrics, you do kind of wonder specifically who she is singing about. Man, who knows? Who knows? It's hard to speculate. It really is difficult to know specifically who this could be about. I do just have to say how cool it is though that pop girlies are dropping diss tracks in the year of beefs. You've got to say and hand it to hip hop once again for driving pop culture in a direction where we have diss tracks coming in the hyperpop world. I mean, what the hell, man? What the hell? But Girl So Confusing is a track I do want to address as well, where initially I will say I fell for it too, where I was like, oh my god, who's she singing about here? She got the same hair. People say we should collaborate, but when we hang out, it's awkward and it's weird. And I was like, who is this? But it kind of tricks you, because I think on first listen, if you aren't picking up on every lyric, which I, to be honest, don't, like I tend to let an album live a bit longer, and then as it reveals itself more, I pick up on more of these kind of little details, because I do think you need to listen to the album multiple times really to catch those things. And yeah, on first listen I was like, but on more listens I was like, oh, this is actually kind of a sad song. This is very much just her speaking on the perspective of being a woman in the industry and having so much pressure to constantly be compared to every other woman, and how you're always pitted against each other, and how it feels like you have to, you know, make friends in a way that maybe male artists don't necessarily have to do. And if you don't like somebody, it's like drama and this, that, and the other. And it shouldn't necessarily be that way. And I do applaud this album and Charli for multiple times touching on really vulnerable and interesting topics that kind of do take the industry down from the inside and kind of like pull it and reveal many of the issues that live within it. Rewind as well, highlighting how difficult it is to be a part of this life and constantly being scrutinized by the media, the paparazzi, and having to avoid all of those things in your life because you've hit a point where you're just really always looking at your image, wondering the amount of food you're eating because you don't want to get to a point where you're not considered, you know, attractive enough to be part of the music industry. Like lots of things like this, and just taking it back to the really easy days of just being young and not having to think about any of these things. Yeah, I mean, Charli is touching on some really interesting topics here, and I think she does it not in the most profound way, because I don't necessarily think her writing is the strongest in the world or anything like that, but she does it in a way that's effective enough and impressive enough for me to at least appreciate that actually there's a lot of depth to this album. Think about it all the time. I mean, again, how much pressure there is to constantly be putting out music, to fulfilling contract obligations, while also just living your normal life, meeting friends, and realizing that they're having babies and they're the same age as you, or maybe a little bit younger, and you're like there thinking, oh man, like, is it time for me to start doing this? Or is it going to take away the freedom that I have? Is it going to take away all the time that I put into the music that I love and the craft that I want to create? Like, really interesting stuff here that hasn't really been touched on much at all by any artist really that I can think of in recent times. But again, it's not done in the most profound way. It's kind of a bit like a stream of consciousness sort of approach that she takes with this writing. But I kind of feel like it represents how a lot of women may be thinking, particularly in the industry, or even in any career really. Like, you don't just land on one idea when you're thinking about something that's so important, of when it's like about having a child. Like, your brain is going to be all over the place. It's going to be an overdrive. I'd imagine even men think this too, but I just think, yeah, particularly from a woman's perspective, I think this is a really good track, to be honest. And I don't necessarily think the writing is weak at all. I think it's really strongly done, and yeah, really showcases how this feeling might transpire in ways that you can't really control, and you can't really land on one thought. It's just kind of all these thoughts mounting up at once. And isn't it wild that I've spent minutes and minutes and minutes talking about these things in a Charli review? Because I think even the biggest Charli XCX fan doesn't even go to her music for any of this. I mean, you be serious in the comments. If you're a massive Charli fan, do you go to her music for lyrical depth? I don't think you do, but that's one of the coolest aspects of Brat. I mean, it's a bit messy at times. You've got friggin' disses flying out, but you've also got this incredibly vulnerable side to Charli popping up on multiple tracks, and it's done really well, I think. Speaking of the messy, bratty disses, though, you got to mention Sympathy as a Knife, which I think, again, might be targeting someone particular in the industry, or maybe just somebody. I don't know. Reading into it, some people are speculating it could be about Taylor Swift. I don't really want to focus on that, because I don't really want to be speculating on something that isn't real or isn't confirmed. It just feels wrong. You know, like when it was Kendrick versus Drake, I'm all over that, because you know they are at each other and it's direct and you know what's going on. But when it's a bit of a shady diss, like on this track, shouldn't really be speculating too much because it's just not fair to the artists involved. And if it's not even that artist, it would feel wrong to speak on it. But maybe it is about that person because there is that line about how I don't want to see you at my boyfriend's show, which, you know, interesting. But also, yeah, just having that idea of somebody forcing sympathy and not really needing it from you. And again, Charli comes through with a bit of attitude, a bit of braggadocio coming in, particularly like on a track like Von Dutch and 360. I think this track kind of has both of those energies combined into this track. Instrumentally, I think it's just so good. Like, this is Pop 2, like, at its best, isn't it, really? Like, this is the best moments of Pop 2 just in a track on Brat, I think. I think it's fantastic. It also has a bit of like a similarity to How I'm Feeling Now. I think she's tapping into the best aspects of that album too on this one. And also, the beat kind of drives in a similar way to Gone from the self-titled Charli album a little bit, I think. If you kind of peel back some of the instrumentation, you hear that groove, that drive a little bit. Either way, this is definitely a contender for being the best song on the whole thing. Going back to the more vulnerable tracks, you've got Everything's Romantic, which I think is a great one. You've also got So I, which is a beautiful Sophie tribute. I mean, the It's Okay to Cry little nod I thought was really cleverly done as well. Talking about how, like, you know, having to do those songs that Sophie made for Charli live kind of hits her hard at times because it almost feels a little wrong to do them, but also you do want to kind of keep the spirit alive and the beauty of that alive. Yeah, I thought that was done pretty well on this track. Kind of good to hear a Sophie tribute done well this year. I'm looking at you, St. Vincent. Now, I did really like that St. Vincent album. It's one of my favourites of the year so far, but that Sophie tribute, not done so well. Nice to hear somebody that actually knew Sophie and met her and was friends with her do it very well on an album. I just got to hand it to Charli here because we needed something this year. My only major gripe, I would say, I mean, is it major? It's one track that I just don't really like that much, is Mean Girls. I think that's the one track, if you want to point to the lyrical issues on this album, you might want to go with this one. I just think it's really trashy. It has that camp feel, and maybe I'm just not the target audience to like this kind of thing. I don't know. I think there's somebody out there that'll absolutely love it. I don't even really like the production all that much, actually. I thought the piano little line was a bit weak. And this is a Hudson Mohawk produced track. You know how much I love that guy? Hoodmo is fantastic. He had an album last year, or was it 2022? 2022 maybe? Cry Sugar. Great album, love that thing. Massive fan of Hoodmo, and I don't even like his production on this track. So there you go. You can't even say I'm biased towards that guy, because he is a great producer usually, but unfortunately I just don't think he got it quite right on this one. And again, the lyrics just feel a bit trashy to me. But the album ends strongly. I've already mentioned I think about it all the time. I love how you've got this really deep track about thinking about maybe having a baby one day and coming off birth control and all this kind of stuff. And then you got 365, which kind of just like obliterates that entire thought process you just had. and then you make a song about just doing drugs. That is as Charli XCX as it possibly could get. That is as Brat as it could get. The themes, the narratives, the lyrics are wildly all over the place. It very much lives up to the name. Even some friggin' diss tracks are dropping in this album too. Yeah, this is very much the Brat era you would expect from an album titled Brat, and an artist who is clearly wanting to just take control of their own vision and their artistic integrity and just do everything in a way that they want it to be. In case you hadn't already figured it out, I think this is great. I think it's one of the best albums of the year. I'm going to go 8.5. I think Charli is in her bag on this album. She absolutely delivered so well here. And I think she is just, yeah, channeling the best aspects of all kinds of her music, doing it so well, taking it a little bit of a step further, going a bit more of a punchier, dancier house direction in places as well, while also keeping the original sound and style intact, and just proving that she is up there with the very best when it comes to the pop girls of our time. Like, seriously, some of the albums and the projects and the mixtapes she's put out are super high quality, And I think many should be shaken in their boots, because the discography she has so far is very, very good. Very, very good. Yeah, Charli's showing us she's not to be messed with. One of her best albums. I'd put it in like probably her top 2, to be honest with you, including her mixtapes. That is where I'm standing right now. Let me know your thoughts on this album here. What do you think? What's your favourite track? Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Let me know. What's the best Charli album? Let me know as well. Have a good day. Subscribe and goodbye.